Hello everyone, this is Reggie Dawson. Welcome to the Getting Started with Angular 2 course for Tuts Plus. In this video, we will learn a little bit about TypeScript and how it fits in with Angular 2. As I said before, Angular 2 is built on TypeScript, which uses ES6 syntax but compiles to JavaScript. Standard ES5 JavaScript is also valid TypeScript, so you can still use your existing code. Where TypeScript differs is in the typing system. Although it is optional, I recommend you use the typing system in your projects. A typing system helps with large projects by identifying the expected type of a value in your code. This extends to arrays and objects and allows an editor such as VS Code to recognize the expected value. This is helpful in a large project or when other developers will be working with your code. Instead of wondering what data you should use in a generic variable such as val1, with typings you will know what type of value to use. Before we look at a little bit of TypeScript syntax, we will discuss the tsconfig.json and the typings.json file we set up with our project. First, the tsconfig file that controls how our TypeScript file will be compiled. The target in the compiler options tells the compiler to generate ES5 JavaScript. Module determines the style of module loader that we are using. Other options are CommonJS, AMD, and UMD. Module resolution decides how modules get resolved, and source map generates a corresponding map file that maps the generated JavaScript to its source TypeScript. The emit decorator metadata and experimental decorators allows us to use decorators in our app. We will discuss decorators more in a moment. Remove comments determines whether any comments we add are removed when we compile. And finally, we have no implicit any. This controls how the compiler will behave when it cannot infer a type. Since TypeScript is optionally typed, if we don't supply a type, it needs to figure out the type based on how we use the variable. With no implicit any set to false, the compiler will default to any for a type it can't figure out. If we set this to true, TypeScript will report an error when it cannot infer the type. Then we have the exclude block where we exclude any files we want the compiler to ignore. In addition to the node modules that contain TypeScript files, we have also included some files from the typings folder. This is because there are two sets of typings that were installed, so we have to ignore one of them. If we go to typings.json, we see the ES6 shim. This represents a typing that has been added to our project. The TypeScript compiler doesn't understand methods that may be included with external libraries. When this happens, you will get an error in the compiler. To fix this, we can obtain typings for the library that we are using so that TypeScript understands the methods and the compiler works. The ambient flag in the dependencies indicates the typing file comes from definitely typed. Definitely typed is a huge repository of typing files for most popular libraries. In our typings.json file, we are grabbing the ES6 shim typings file. The number at the end represents the commit ID of the typings file. The typings were installed in the post install. The typing file was then copied to our typings folder for us. Now that we understand what we have set up as far as the TypeScript compiler is concerned, let's take a look at the language itself. The first thing we will look at is the typing of values. Here we have the basic types we have used in JavaScript, but we have the added identifier that tells the compiler what type of value is used with the variable. If we try to store a number in the myName variable, we will get an error. This will hold true if we try to store the wrong type in any variable. We can also use any to specify that any type is available for this variable. We can also use void as a type, typically as the return type of a function that doesn't return a value. Then finally, we can use an array as a type. We use the type of the elements inside of the array followed by square brackets to indicate this is an array type. We can also write an array type like this. Next, we have the interface, which allows you to define a contract in your code about the shape of your values. Here we have created a sample interface, but to understand it better, let's use this interface. In the function, we are specifying the interface as the shape for the argument we pass to our function. Then we create an object to use. The last line will log out our title if we compiled and ran this. A few things to notice about this is that we are only required to use the title property with this interface. We have added another property, but TypeScript doesn't care as long as we have the title property included in this object. If we didn't have it, we would get an error. Also note that the order of the properties doesn't matter as long as the required value is present. The next part of TypeScript you need to understand is classes. In TypeScript, we can use classes to build our applications in an object-oriented way. Angular 2 leverages this by using classes as the backbone of the framework. Instead of learning syntax specific to the framework, Angular 2 syntax is based on TypeScript. In this way, you are not limiting yourself in learning Angular 2, since the syntax will be useful when developing outside of Angular 2. At its most basic, a class is created like this. Any logic as well as a constructor function can be included in this class. How we extend this in Angular 2 is through the use of decorators. This decorator adds metadata that tells the application that this class is an Angular component. We build our apps through adding metadata for our components, services, directives, etc. Everything we build in Angular 2 will be based on a class. We will explore this further as we build our applications. Finally, as we build our app, we will be running the npm start script. This will launch our app in a preview and run the compiler in watch mode. Any changes will be compiled and reflected in the preview. Those are all the basics of TypeScript you need to know to get started with Angular 2. By all means, check out the TypeScript documentation to learn more, as I only scratched the surface of the features available. In the next video, we will get started with building our first component.